Got my freshman dorm leader fired a year after he called the cops on me. I've never really posted anything before, but I have a funny revenge or karma story that my friends have always enjoyed. I first got to college my freshman year and met the dorm leader RA at most schools. Like most colleges, the dorm leader was the upperclassman that lived in the dorms and monitored the freshman halls. My dorm leader's name was Julio, fake name by the way, and at first, he seemed like a nice dude that minded his own business. He talked about how he would stay out of everyone's business if we would stay out of his. Also, he tried to be the cool dorm leader and always mentioned to me about how he drank tons of alcohol his freshman year in the dorms. He gave off the impression he really didn't care if we ever drank in our dorm rooms, but to just keep it on the low if we did. I really didn't drink much at all, but I appreciated the fact he seemed pretty normal and didn't try to rat on kids. During the last week of October of my freshman year of college, I had one of the hardest weeks of my academic career. I was a biochemistry major taking some pretty tough classes and had 3 exams that week. At the end of the week, a friend I had recently made down the hall invited me to his dorm room to watch an upcoming NBA game. As we were watching the game, he had a bottle of vodka and gave some to the guys in the dorm. Being a naive and stupid freshman kid just trying to make some friends, I took one shot of vodka and continued to watch the game. As we're watching the game, one of the guys in the dorm spills a bottle of soda and rushes to the bathroom to grab some paper towels. As he walks out of the dorm room, Julio walked by and noticed the bottle of vodka. He laughed and said something of the sorts of "I remember when I was a freshman, haha, just try and keep it down." We thanked him and told him to have a good night. It seemed like a normal conversation and nothing out of the ordinary. 30 minutes later, we hear a knock on the door and 2 policemen showed up with breathalyzers. They told us they had received a complaint from Julio about underage drinking and a party being thrown in the dorm room. Remember, it was 3 guys watching a Lakers game on a Thursday night at 8 p.m. I ended up getting a minor in consumption charge for blowing a O2. Had to do 20 hours community service, a reflection journal, and appear to the Judicial Affairs Center at my college about my supposed drinking problem. I'm not blaming the officer for giving me a ticket, but I was pretty upset that Julio, who always talked about getting shit-faced freshman year in the dorm, called the police right after he essentially gave us the okay for the night. A few weeks later, I see Julio and straight up asked him why he decided to rat me out. Specifically, I asked why he didn't just tell me to head back to my dorm if he had a problem with the alcohol instead of calling the police right after our conversation. He responds word for word with "You made a decision and had to suffer the consequences of that decision." After that incident, I never really talked to him, but he always tried to be buddy-buddy when he saw me in the hallway. Anyway, I eventually leave the dorms and move off campus for my sophomore year. I had decided to rush a fraternity my freshman year and ended up meeting some really nice guys. I have never been the fraternity type, but I went to a smaller college where fraternities are a lot different than most places. During the second semester of my sophomore year, my fraternity was taking a new pledge class. One day I received a text from Julio saying one of the guys pledging your fraternity has been caught dealing alcohol to another freshman in the dorms. I thought I would let you know. Turns out Julio was the dorm leader for a freshman pledging my fraternity and ratted him out to Judicial Affairs as well. Thinking the term dealing alcohol was the lamest or funniest thing I have ever heard, I sent that to our fraternity GroupMe and everyone laughed about it. About a week later, that kid pledging our fraternity came up to me asking about the message I received from Julio. Essentially, a pretty similar thing happened to him like what happened to me. Julio found out he had given another kid in the dorm a bottle of wine and reported it to the police. This kid ended up getting a minor in possession and had to speak with Judicial Affairs. This is where the story gets hilarious. In his meeting with Judicial Affairs, the kid pledging our fraternity told the Judicial Affairs guy that his dorm leader Julio was now a senior at this point had texted me about the charges pending against him. Apparently, it's a huge violation to discuss pending charges against a freshman in your dorm to a third party. The Judicial Affairs guy told him that if he could prove Julio was discussing this charge with a third party me, he would receive severe sanctions. Basically, if I sent that text to the Judicial Affairs people, Julio would be in a shitload of trouble. So I sent the text that night to the Judicial Affairs people. After that, I didn't hear anything about what happened to Julio and had honestly forgotten about it. However, nearing the end of the school year in my sophomore year, I saw Julio at the dining hall and came up to speak to me. He tells me a story about how he knows I was the one that ratted him to Judicial Affairs, how he ended up getting fired from his dorm leader position. lost the scholarship money his dorm leader job provided him, and overall how shitty his life has been since he got fired. After going through his entire sob story, he asked me, "Why did you do that? This could have been handled completely differently. I didn't have to get fired and I could have kept my scholarship money." I look at him dead in the eye for what seemed like 30 seconds and say, "Julio, you made a decision and had to suffer the consequences of that decision." Later, my RA made it seem like it'd be okay to drink in the dorms, but then called the cops on us. I then used the same one-liner on him a year later when I got him fired for violating school policy.